Hey, it's Wednesday. It's Redeemer. Redeemer. So it must be Wednesday Reflections at Redeemer. This is Andrew. I'm going to throw out a little fact and we're going to talk about it. Batman, yes, Batman is an Episcopalian. You want to talk about that? All right. Well, as I was writing a much larger episode for my podcast, the Church Nerd Podcast, I did some research because I had heard this claim on some Episcopal Facebook and Reddit boards a couple years ago, or it had popped up, in some comic book, threads and message boards and things like that. And it stirred a conversation about Batman's religious affiliation. Basically, in Batman number 52, Batman had claimed to be agnostic, and it sparked a whole bunch of controversy about, no, actually, Batman has historically been, some flavor of Christian. Look at this panel from this and this panel from this, and he may not be practicing, but he at least was raised a certain way, and seems to have, in other stories where he's gotten married or about to been married, it was in a clearly a Christian religious format, like in a church with the priest and the tux and the boutonniere and whatnot. Anyway, so it started this large conversation about Batman's religious affiliation, and the claim was made that Batman was Episcopalian. And if you search Batman Episcopalian, you'll find like databases that go through and list every comic character or fictitious character's religious affiliation, and like, so-and-so is this and so-and-so is that. And Batman is, either, depending on who you're listening to, either is listed as Episcopalian or Protestant, assumed Episcopalian, or Catholic/Protestant, and that comes from comic history. It is fairly well established that Batman's mother, Martha Wayne, was raised Catholic, but it's also heavily implied that Thomas Wayne, Bruce's dad, was Protestant. And so anyway, there's all this discussion about, what is Batman's religious affiliation. And again, as I mentioned, it all stems from this. It stems from, if I can get it to work, this screenshot. Oh no. That was supposed to work. Let me try this again real quick. I had this all set up beforehand, and the settings went wonky on me. All right. Apologies for the gap, but basically it's in this comic, which I actually went and found and purchased and read. Batman has been left at the altar by Catwoman, and in the aftermath of this grieving process, he's talking with this woman, and she basically says, "Do you believe in God, Bruce?" That yes, that's just it. I used to, he said. Now, that's what sparked this whole conversation about, what is Batman's religious identity? And clearly he was raised in a Christian denomination, or as a Christian. But the details on that don't go specifically that far. However, when you look at all these research, all these databases that claim Batman as an Episcopalian, there's not really much actual hard evidence. There's not a primary source that says, boink, here's the panel or here's the comic that points to it exactly. It's just sort of heavily implied. The kinds of implications are, for example, when a given artist has depicted the gravesites of Martha and Thomas Wayne, it's the very Anglican Celtic style crosses where it's a cross, and then it's got that circle that goes around the cross section of the cross, a very Celtic style, and so that would have been, if they were Protestant, it would have been an Anglican or an Episcopal cross instead of, Baptist or what have you. But here's the real kicker. Elliot S. Maggin was a freelance writer who worked with DC Comics from 1970 to 2000. And he had been writing a novelization of the Kingdom Come storyline, wherein an elder, Bruce Wayne, encounters an elder, Talia al Ghul, who is a former love interest of his, and who, Talia is her heritage is Arabic, and so she is, presumably of a Muslim heritage, and of course, Bruce Wayne is Bruce Wayne, and so, author Elliot Maggin, who was, writing for DC, right, in charge of this of Bruce Wayne's story for a time, has said, "It is fairly obvious that Bruce," I'm quoting, "It is fairly obvious that Bruce Wayne is an Episcopalian. He is a descendant of New England Puritans and the scion of an old and prosperous family whose ancestry is manifest and public. He shares the heritage and, at least nominally, the religion of his socio-economic class." Right, me again. Again, so if they're a waspy, old money family, then, it would be comfortable to assume they were perhaps, Episcopal style Protestant and not, low country Baptist Protestant. All right, continuing on, quoting Maggin. "I give all my characters and religions a sociological context, at least as backstory. I understand how and why the owners of the character, DC and Warner Brothers, might shrink from asserting this overtly, but it's hardly a secret. Toward the end of the Kingdom Come novel, I had an exchange between the aging Bruce and his old love Talia when she showed up as the Mother Superior of Mother Teresa's old order of nuns. Talia said something like, 'We're Muslims, I suppose, but I'm flexible.' And Bruce's response with it was that he was Episcopalian, but flexible as well. By the time the book got out into the market, mention of specific religions, though not the circumstances, had mysteriously vanished, and the characters simply agreed that they were both flexible." So that comes from author Elliot Maggin. So at least in Maggin's mind, Bruce is specifically Episcopalian, or some waspy version of Protestant, is kind of a general assumption. So that's why we say that Batman is Episcopalian. And I'm totally cool with that. I'm claiming it. I'm claiming that Batman is Episcopalian. And even though it's not written specifically in a comic book, it's there. I mean, other characters like, say, Marvel, for example, are much more comfortable with putting their intellectual property in real-world situations. Like, Spider-Man lives in New York City, New York, not in Metropolis or Central City or Gotham or some fictionalized town or city. The Teen Titans live in... Oh, that's actually a bad example because they live in San Francisco. Anyway, but yeah, so all your superheroes live in actual towns that are named, that are real places. If we look at Matt Murdock from Marvel Comics, the Daredevil, if we look at Daredevil, he lives in Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of New York, and is blind and is very Catholic. It's a major part of his character and his motivations and why he is the way he is. And so Marvel has no problem leaning into Catholicism as one of his defining characteristics. So it's funny that DC would say, well, we're going to say he's a waspy Protestant, but not actually claim the Episcopal Church. Which I mean, I see why you do it, because it doesn't paint you in a corner. Let's say if the Episcopal Church gets terrible press, then you're kind of having to have a character be associated with that. Luckily, I don't think we've had too much bad press. And actually, if we had, it would give the character something to struggle with and something to have to work through. Because, we would have to work through it in real life, and it might be interesting on the page. Likewise, it's much easier to make Matt Murdock a Catholic, because the Catholic Church is very large and is very historical across time. And so it's very easy, especially in an American eye, or for an American audience, to think there's Catholic and there's Protestant. Even though, of course, we in the Episcopal Church would very much say, like, we are neither really, we're not Catholic, but we're not really actually very Protestant. If you have to lump us in there, we are, but we're really kind of a third way. We're a middle path. We're not exactly Catholic. We're not exactly Protestant. We're the middle way. How we worship is very different from how, let's say, a Pentecostal would worship, a Baptist would worship, things like that. And so, all that to say, people have no problem tacking on Catholicism as a character trait, but Episcopalianism seems too niche. And maybe it's because we're not as big. Also, doesn't that completely ignore the huge, huge global impact of Orthodox Christianity? That's a discussion for another day. All this to say, Batman, go ahead. Claim your Episcopal identity. Even if right now you've seen too much stuff out there on the streets of Gotham to say, like, well, I'm having trouble claiming my faith right now. That's just it, says Bruce. I used to believe in God. Maybe he's just a lapsed Episcopalian. Who knows? But I'm going to claim it, and I hope you do too. Well, that's all the time we have for this Wednesday reflection. I hope to see you on church on Sunday. We've had some good ones. I was out of town last week, but I'm back in town, and I look forward to seeing you. So tell me what you think of the comments about what do you think, if you think Batman is Episcopalian, or if you want to know more about other fictional characters and their religious upbringing. So anyway, I look forward to sharing questions and comments as well. So as always, dear ones, God bless.